Welcome, Jeff. We are so excited to have Jeff Whipple with us at Mills Gallery with a show called Seeing Through the Lines, Evocative Paintings, and I tell you, they are evocative, paintings and sculpture by Jeff Whipple. The show is up now, Mills Gallery in Orlando, and we're going to have a reception where Jeff will be there to speak a little bit about his work. We have known each other, I think, 25 or more years. How long, Jeff?
At least, and it's great to see you, and welcome to my studio. I'm glad you could be here, at least digitally, or however this works.
Where are you located? Where's the studio?
It's in Jacksonville, and near downtown Jacksonville, and it's you can't see it all here, but it's a 12,000 square foot warehouse space, and it's like a giant barn. And I have, even in here, even with the show that's downtown at your gallery, there's 200 and something works on the walls in here. There's a lot more in storage, and anyway, it's in a burgeoning arts district in Jacksonville, and glad to be here as far as that goes.
Well, I never get tired of looking at your work. And for people who do not know you, you're one of the most accomplished artists in the state. 84 solo exhibitions, hard to believe, of one person. And for you to work with us at Mills, we're really honored to have you. So thanks, Jeff. And would love for us to kind of talk a little bit about what people will see at Mills. And I am always interested in hearing you speak about that contrast between the realistic depiction in a pictorial narrative of humans, figures, objects, and then how you contrast that with your Nike swoosh, which is the spasm. So long open-ended question, but start with what were some of the things that you're excited to show at Mills?
Well, that's a great selection of work, and you hung it beautifully. It looks really wonderful over there, and it's exciting to be in a gorgeous space. It's a wonderful gallery, and in a great neighborhood too. And now that work is a lot of designs that use my three-line motif. That's what I call it. It's the three lines that are grouped together that has been in my work for 40 years, going back to the 80s. And well, I'll talk about that first, because that's what a lot of people ask about. And it's good that they ask, because they see it repeated all over my work. And of course, it looks like it means something. And that's what I want. I want it to make it look like it means something. And that's why there's three lines. And because in all the arts, and this is true of music and a lot of poetry and writing, it's just a perception thing. When one thing happens once, well, that's whatever, it doesn't mean anything. But if it happens twice, well, maybe that's a coincidence. But if it happens three times, well, then that's a definite, purposeful thing. And that's why I went to that back, when I was first starting my professional work. I initially just had figures in a blank background. I have a couple of examples here, like this one. This is from 1981. This is the year after graduate school, and this is just typical. I would have figures doing something odd or unusual against a flat background, and I was, all my professors when I was in school in my undergraduate years were abstract expressionists from the 1950s, and I really learned and began to love abstract art. But I wanted imagery. I've wanted imagery since I was a little kid. I wanted to tell stories, and you have to have images to tell stories in visual art. And so at a young age, I taught myself how to draw and paint realistically. And that was the goal, is to really be as realistically as I could be with images, to convey a story, tell something, or just have people think there's a story, or make up their own story. I never wanted to be an illustrator. I didn't want to tell people what to think. I wanted them to look at the art and come up with their own stories. That's what I find really intriguing about a lot of arts, that here's another one, where these are just people I put in this new context to change the relationships between them, and create some kind of a provocative idea. Who knows what it's about? It doesn't really matter, because it's going to be different for everyone. There's 1981. So, but it is meant to help the viewer be creative also, and put together, well, what's going on here? And the cool thing about this is that when people have my work over years, they will say that, well, I had this piece and I had this one idea about it, and then some years later, something happened in my life, and I had a whole different idea about what that piece meant to me. And I love that. It's a great idea. That great concept for me as an artist, that I'm helping people see things in their own way, in their own time. This is a self-portrait from 1981. This is a self-portrait of myself strapped to a vacuum. I guess I was saying something about vacuous people or something. But
And what it really impresses me is the technical skill that you have. I love your drawings too, but just as the technical accuracy as a painter and what you're able to do with the human figure, yourself included right there, is miraculous to me. And then the curveball. The vacuum is a curveball. You throw lots of curveballs to the viewer, which makes it a source of debate and conversation, and helps people kind of come up with their own interpretations.
well, thank you. And that's what I want. I want people to just engage and bring their own life to the artwork. And I'm part of it. Maybe I'm just half of it as the art experience goes, and the viewer becomes the other half. This piece has a really interesting story to me now, because I did this in 1981, and it was in a gallery show in Tampa in 1982, and it sold. It had already won a top prize in a competition, and it was in this collector bought this because he thought it was an intriguing piece. And I had a show here in Jacksonville last month, and the guy who owned this painting now lives near Jacksonville, and he showed up at the gallery opening with this painting. It just blew me away. I hadn't seen it in 40 years. It was such a thrill. I mean, it's like seeing an old buddy from back in my childhood or something. But it's my old painting. It's so cool to see it again. And I asked him if I could borrow it to take a photograph, because I didn't have any new good digital photograph stuff, and he said sure. So I'll get it back to him soon. But nice. It's so cool to see it.
Great piece. Great, really great piece.
What happened with the backgrounds right away, the next year or so, I started making markings in the background. You kind of see, this one's from '84, but it was something I did in and started in '82, right, where I would make these little markings all over the background.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to make the background more neutral and more like music, with the images being the lyrics and the background being like music.
But this is a big change from those pieces you showed us at the beginning, because you're really activating the surface in a different kind of way and creating that dimensionality within the environment where the figure resides. So it's I love it. I love it.
And that's what I mentioned, that I had the abstract expressionist background, and I always wanted to work with that and incorporate it with the imagery in some way. And I started doing it pretty early on in my career. So I started making these markings all over the place, but then I narrowed it down to what I was talking about with the three lines. And so that is the print, but you can see that this background has the three lines in the abstract background, and it's repeating and repeating. Sometimes I think of it like a repeating drum beat in a pop song. Right. Three lines. And then whatever's happening with the imagery, and then I started combining different images with the background, so that there would be more of a like a poem, like one stanza, another stanza, that kind of thing.
Well, there's a rhythm. There's a rhythm throughout the painting because of the pattern, the repetition in the background, and it really pushes forward the figure. So here we have your three lines, and the show is called Seeing Through the Lines. And as we look at the three lines, they're repeated and repeated. And you describe this as sort of a logo, your Nike swoosh, if you will. But it has so much more meaning, as you mentioned, from coincidence to pattern, because it's repeated. Talk a little bit about the whole idea of spasms, as you call this symbol.
In development of my work, and my themes tend to be mostly about life, what it's like to be alive and how to enjoy life and how to experience different things that are happening in the world, or but I don't cover social issues, and I don't do dark and scary things. I don't do surrealism really, but I want people to see something and it may be about life. And so at some point I needed a symbol for life. And I was like, well, what do I want to do for, I want a life symbol because I want the life symbol there. And then I want a person there and I want them to interact somehow. And I thought, oh, I already have that. The 3 lines makes the same statement about life as I wanted to say anyway, because it's, when you look at something like a rock and it's not moving, but if it starts moving and you know, well, maybe that was just an earthquake, but if it starts moving around and that's the 3rd time, and then you think, well, that's something real, it's alive. And that's what I meant by the spasm. We call them that because it's that spasm of movement with that pattern that says that something's alive. And that doesn't matter necessarily, as long as you know when you see the images like this one. This is a print of a painting that's in the exhibition. And then you see a young girl in the background, that's covered with you can see it, the 3 lines repeated. It becomes an environment for her. And it's like an environment of life symbols. And I could say, and anybody can have their own interpretation about these, but I would kind of suggest that maybe that means that she's in the environment of all the people that ever lived in her life, her family, her relatives going back in time. And then she's got a floating life symbol that's like a kite balloon or something that's going up there. And maybe that's her contemplating what's going to happen in her life as a young woman. And maybe that's going to be a child for her, or maybe her represented as a career. And it could be a lot of different things. Right. That's why I like the images being open like this, and I let people go their own way with it.
It's one of my favorite pieces in the show, and it's in a center portion of the exhibit, and then contrasted on the other side of a figure, a woman who is wearing a skirt of spasms, if you will, and a mask, spasm mask. Can you speak a little bit about where you take it from? The figure is operating in this background of these abstract repetitions of the spasm to having them wear them and become part of them. What were you thinking when you set it up in that way and went there?
Models, and they were wearing these costumes that I built that were based on the 3-line motif, the life thing. And then as a mask, it says, well, maybe she's looking out from life, her life, that's her symbol of herself, and that becomes another representation. And you don't really know her identity because it doesn't really matter. It's about a symbolic person. And another one that's just very similar to that, as mentioned, is this one, which is it's in the show as a larger print, but it started as a watercolor, and this is a print of a watercolor. But you see that this is a young woman reading a book that has, if you can see it, the life symbol on it, and she's coming out of emerging out of a field of life symbols. And that's, again, it's like, well, what is that? Maybe that's her background, her life, her form, her community coming out of that, and she's reading the history of that community. And it's called History. That's the name of the painting.
I love that piece, and I don't know if people who don't know a lot about you, you've done a lot of public art, large scale murals, quite accomplished in that. That one looks like it might have been something you also connected with the libraries. Can you just speak just a little bit about your love of doing work that goes in public spaces like that?
Oh, what a blast that is. And anytime I have a work that is large enough that the general public can walk upon it, especially when they don't expect it, they're like, wow, this is amazing. When it's my regular work, but I also really love doing paintings for buildings. And in the case you mentioned, I've done 3 libraries where I've done paintings of people just enjoying books, and they're just reading books, and they're acting very, like reading is something that's so powerful, it's lifting them up in the air. And that's what I wanted to convey. It's for children too, and they have children in paintings, but it's the idea that reading and art can take you to another place. And I love that as a writer. I mean, that makes sense to me, even though it's such a privilege to be able to make paintings for these libraries. Also, and I've also done a couple schools where one of them was 9 feet by 75 feet long. I love working on a scale where, when I have paintings and paintings of heads in the painting that are this tall off the floor, and it's working on a face that's that large. It was a blast to do that.
Well, they're monumental. I think I first became acquainted with your work in Volusia County. You had a couple of public art pieces with new buildings. So it's great to see your work on a much larger scale. I wanted to ask another question about your collaborative process and then your solo artist process. I love the fact after we hung the show, I just went back to YouTube and I started watching all of these videos about you, your process, and some of the collaborations you've done with actors and putting your work out visibly on a public street in front of a museum on a big screen. Can you speak a little bit about, your collaboration and your other interest with writing too? Because you've got a couple books now.
Yeah, well, I've had plays. I've been writing plays since I began painting as a professional. And I like theater so much because, as I even described my earlier work, they were in a stage-like situation where the painting characters were working, interacting on a very shallow stage-like space. I call that series stages. But at the same time, I was writing my first plays. And I had the same thing happening with live actors on the stage. They were interacting and talking. The thing about that is they could move around, they could talk, they could tell stories, and then you could talk about the past and you could see the future. And all that's, to me, it was far more information to work with and different type of fun. Really enjoy that. And that has just evolved over the years. I had 20-something play productions around the country and mostly in Chicago and Florida. And I love that whole process. It's one thing I never imagined. I just wanted to write plays and I want people to move around on stage, blah, blah, blah. But when I got involved with the productions, it was so cool working with the actors and the director and the stage designer, and the set builder and the costumes and just, the interaction, and so much energy goes into a play and all these people involved in it. You don't see that when you see the thing. You forget all of that when you're watching it as an audience. It's a lovely, lovely process that I really enjoy. And I'm not sure if that answered what you asked.
No, I think it's related because your paintings are narrative in what you put out there, and then that flows into your theater. So I think there must be some it's inspiration back and forth. But you also write. So tell us about a little bit about your writing. I think we're going to have a couple of books at Mills that you can purchase. So just share a little bit about your writing passion.
Well, I've been an arts writer also, another thing that I did throughout the years. And that's a different kind of writing than, of course, than writing for the stage. But also, I've always written short stories and blocking in novels. And so two things that have kind of coincidentally happened in the last years, I polished up a novel and I have that ready to go. And so that'll be available at the gallery. It just came out in December. And it's called Cherub Trouble, and it's about an artist. What a surprise! But it's based on my experiences. Like 25 years ago, I was working as a decorative artist to make ends meet, and that put me in. This is the cool thing about artists; it put me in multi-million-dollar homes making paintings, decorative art. But that means you might be a destitute artist, but you're working with the richest people in the community. You're interacting with them, and it's one of the things about artists is that you have that fluidity. You're whatever however well off you are, but you also have access to museums and some of the wealthiest people around, and it's really an interesting combination. That's kind of part of what that story is about. And also what happened and is happening is I'm writing a memoir about my work, my whole career going back 60 years. It's the first memoir came out now, it's last year's, and it's my first 21 years, and it covers from when I was a baby, why I first started making art, and through as my development goes and my urges, as I said, I wanted to tell stories from the beginning. And finding a way to do that and finding the right ways to do that and developing that through high school and then into college. And that's where the story ends, right when I began my professional career. But that's just volume one, because that ends in 1979. And volume two will go in the next 21 years. And that'll be some of the art that I told you about today, and then also the development as I got into complex compositions and writing for theater and then public art as well. and up to today. So there'll be 2 more volumes.
Wow. Okay. We're excited. And then talk a little bit about your painting process. I mean, here we were graced at seeing a glimpse of your studio, only a small bit of it because it's quite large, but talk to us about like the painting process. What gets you going? What's your typical day like? Are you working on 20 things at once?
Yes, just there's always something, and there's always stacks of notes everywhere, and that is part of it too. And it's kind of not a lottery, but it's kind of like, well, it shifts around, and then one thing pops up, and yes, today I want to do this, and I'll with a visual image, I'll begin with sketching in a sketchbook and trying different combinations. And at this point, it can be stick figures. I know what they're going to look like eventually. But I want, if I want people to interact, or if I want them to do something, a gesture, it's the beginning layers of a bunch of thumbnail sketches. They're only this big, and I always encourage artists when I teach. I make my students understand how valuable that is. That you can make a mistake in 20 seconds or 30 seconds this big. That if you just started on the canvas, it'd be 2 weeks to make the same mistake. And
Right.
You can improve it. And I do that and do all these different layouts. And at that point, if I find something I really am intrigued by, well, then I'll hire models. And if there's costumes involved or period pieces or whatever they need to wear, I'll dress them up like that. And I have a photo studio here, and I'll take good pictures of them. And because I could draw from life, I love doing that. And days and days and days to have a model standing there, and that'd be the best thing. It's so much fun to have somebody around like that, but it's just not practical. So I make photos of them and then paint from that and do the drawings and lay it out on a canvas. And that's for the paintings. And I have a section for painting. I have another section just for drawings. Can't combine them two, they're too messy on a big table to do drawings. And I do sculpture downstairs, which you can't see here, but that's because it's heavy and I don't want to haul it up the stairs. I don't have an elevator. But that's the only reason.
The sculptures are exciting. Tell us what they're made of. I have not seen you do this before. They're exciting and they're fun and they're beautiful.
Well, for years I worked with casting in plastic, actually resin. I would make something out of clay and make a rubber mold and cast it in resin, and that would be the sculpture. Or in some cases, I would cast in what's called hydrocal, which is a brand name for a really hard plaster. And so I did that for a long time. Then I needed things that are more durable outside. And I started in researching it, and I discovered GFRC, which is the term for architectural concrete that they use on buildings. And it's glass reinforced, glass fiber reinforced concrete. And it's basically fiberglass mixed with a resin and the concrete, which makes it super hard and lightweight. And so you see it on the building facades. And so I started casting in that for public art projects and for my own stuff. And it just opened up a whole lot of new doors because I can, it comes out concrete color, but I can paint it, anything I want. So I put my bright colors on. And so what you have in the gallery now is a bunch of small concrete pieces. They're right here, but
Vessels and things. Yeah.
Yep, vessels and some a form that it's a stele. It's like a panel on a flat base, and it's longer, higher than it is wide, and it's something that goes back to ancient times. They would use these things at the outskirts of a town to announce the rules of the town or the border of the town or the border of the country, or they just say some philosophical thing about their particular religion in China or Mesopotamia or something. And it was incorporated into our tombstones in our more recent cultures. And I like that also as a symbol for life. It's a sign. It's got my life symbol on them, and they have different forms, and they are sculptures for me. They're thin, they're about this thick, but about that wide, and about that tall, and they're fun. To me, it's like jazz because it's like I'm just thinking, well, what am I going to do now? I'll cut it this way, I'll cut it that way. Maybe I'll put this color here, I'll put that color there, and it's just like you're reacting to. I mean, the same way a saxophone is reacting to the drum beat and piano, the guitar.
Well, I love them, and I like the fact that you're integrating words now too into some of the newer sculptural work, which is fun. And then also looking at opportunities to make some of them maybe a little bit more interactive, which is really great. We are so excited that you're letting us show your work, Jeff. We're thrilled. Anything else you want to say about the exhibition?
The thing I want to emphasize is that when people look at some of my work, some of it's obvious, some of it's abstract, and they know that that's all that's contained. That's like hearing a song, and they know everything they need to know going into that. But when they see the images, they'll wonder, well, what is that? It looks like something going on, and they immediately go, oh, I don't know what it is, so I need somebody to tell me. And that's the wrong way to look at art, I think. You know, maybe some art does have that. You need somebody who has PhD in critical theory or something to explain it to you. No, I don't do that. I never have done that. So there's nothing in my work that you can't see. There's no hidden meaning. There's nothing below it. It's meant to be unknown. It's meant to be filled in. So you look at it and you go, well, why is that guy doing that? Why is that woman standing there like that? And everyone, I hope, can feel empowered that way. I found out one of my first exhibition, this is a wonderful way to start my career. I had an exhibition in 1981, and I was standing there at the opening. There was a bunch of people there, and a lot of people go, what's going on with your work? And I'd explain it, and same thing I just said, and they'd be okay. And then this woman came up to me, an older woman in her 60s, and she said, you're the artist, aren't you? Because she saw that self-portrait of one of the self-portraits, and she recognized me. And she said, I've had the best time all day. I've been going through every one of your paintings, and I look at them and I tell a story and I laugh. And then I go to the next one, I tell the story to myself and I laugh. And she said that, and she was so excited about it. And I never talked to her about it. I never told her to do that. I never even met her before. But I love that response. And I just hope that everybody can feel that way. And my work is funny, a lot of it is. And I hope that people can find some joy in it and get a kick out of it.